Dawson Rider Wiki.
Hey YouTube, Dawson Rider here with my review of Lupinranger vs. Patranger episode 11, I believe this is. That was 22. That was like, I way messed that up. Wow. Anyway, I'm the dumbest boy in school. Anyway, so episode 11. This was an interesting episode, to say the least. I think it was the most fillery episode. And I don't mean it took place in fillery, but you know, most filler episode we got so far, I think. I mean, they still didn't entirely waste it, if that makes any sense. Like, because they did a little bit stuff with I forget Green's name. I don't care. Patrangers, like a little bit of his backstory, a little bit character stuff on him, which was nice. I actually appreciated that. Like, this episode could have easily just been entirely a silly throwaway, but they actually, I like that they made it count, and that's like a lesson I talk about all the time in any of my Toku reviews, is that filler does not have to be bad. Like, a lot of the times I feel like when I talk about filler, it makes it seem like I don't want it at all, and I think that's a whole discussion for another time about, you know, shows that use filler versus shows that don't, because it's kind of a case-by-case basis. But my point is that filler can be enjoyable and it can also be useful, because a lot of my problems with filler is when it feels like you could skip the episode entirely and it just feels like a weak effort. But this one was, I feel like your mileage will vary in terms of how much you liked the concept of it, but at least I like that they made it count with a little bit of his backstory about when he joined the academy. It started off almost kind of like a joke, where they're like, oh, did you join just to impress girls? And then later he talks about how he's inspired by them. Although I like how, I mean, they show later like he was inspired by them basically giving him inspiring words when he was training. But like before that, it's like, oh wow, they're so good at the shooting range. Like, it was just a funny thing. Like, instead of seeing them make a major arrest or chase down a cop, a dirty cop, there you go, chase down like a criminal, it was just like them doing it at the shooting range. I just thought it was funny, because it was like some, like, practice, basically. But yeah, like, then we find out like he was inspired by those two, that's why he wanted to join the special unit, and they're like, oh, so it's not just to meet girls. He's like, no, that's the part of it. I thought that was funny. But so yeah, that wasn't a huge deal, but again, I like that they made it count a little bit. But the basic plot of the episode was interesting. You start off with like an intro that highlights the Patrangers, and basically you find out it's because they're getting a movie made about them, and Hilltop, being run by Maggie, she's mad at Rick for some reason, and Jesus is going along with it even though it makes no sense, because earlier he was lecturing Morgan about sparing people, but now he's mad that Rick's, you know, he spared Negan. Oh, sorry, that was from the Earth where I review The Walking Dead. No, but Hilltop, like, supports this idea of the Patrangers doing a movie about themselves, or was it a TV show? I think it was a movie. Doesn't matter. Just basically for PR reasons, because they need to see if they can be adapted into PR, because they don't want to get shelved for stupid reasons, like kids don't like trains, like kids don't like two teams, kids don't like the number 6 right away, kids don't like conflict, or just some dumb reason. I don't know if we'll get any dumb reasons that Hasbro's involved. Wow, this video is all over the place. I'm like 3 minutes in, and like half of it has just been me riffing on bits. That's pretty typical. Anyway, he wants them to do it for PR purposes because the Lupinrangers kind of get all this hype and buzz, and the Patrangers are pretty much just seen as the cops, and they're really terrible detectives. Actually, Green solved it this week. I was actually really proud of them. They didn't need help or the Lupinrangers to do it. They solved the case all by himself. He's like, here's what happened, and then we did a monk-style recap. Anyway, God, so easily distracted in this episode. But yeah, they're making a movie, and then it leads to the plot of the week, which is the gangler that can gender swap. And he starts by doing it to Green, and then eventually all the Patrangers get gender swapped. It was interesting. This is kind of like a Sentai trope episode. It's one we don't get here. I don't recall PR ever doing one like that. In my head, I was just thinking of one, but then I realized that was the Boy Meets World episode where they cross-dressed, like, I am Boot Oogly. That was not, I don't know why I thought that was Power Rangers. Wow, that's the fourth distraction. Anyway, but it's like an episode I definitely don't see them translating here, those type of episodes, just because it's kind of a concept that's more of a, again, like a trope episode in Japan, but I feel like that would get some, you definitely immediately see the Twitter backlash on there, like it would be kind of ridiculous. But yeah, it was weird just because I think this was the most I've ever seen a Sentai address genitals, like constantly, like they're gone, they're here, it's gone, like they're just like checking their parts. It was interesting. There were some funny bits to it, but it was also kind of weird. Just, I don't know, like I wasn't entirely sure what they were going for with it in certain ways, but it was what it was. It was a silly episode. I thought the idea of them doing a film to like get their PR up was kind of funny. I'd kind of like to see this come back for like a pseudo sequel episode where like they try to redo it or do a sequel where they have actors playing it, because I think there could be funny stuff with like the Patrangers being mad they're not getting their characters right, but I don't know. It is worth noting that I think this was like the second episode that I felt was more Patranger leaning, and I think the first one where it was like 90% the Patrangers. Like the Lupinrangers were there in like the first act, and then there for the final mech battle, and that was it. There was a funny bit with them where like they were kind of laughing at them like while standing above, and then when they transformed, they all kind of did this slant down into this like grate thing, like it was like a standing platform. It was a funny way of seeing the transformation. But I do think it's funny. Like, I didn't mind this episode. It wasn't my favorite thing. The humor was kind of hit or miss for me. But I do think, or I wish rather, that they would have saved something like this for a little bit later, just because the Patrangers, I feel, have gotten less focus, and I wish that they would have gotten a more real focus episode before we did a silly one, if that makes any sense. Not that it had to be super serious, but I just meant more of like a focused Patranger episode before we kind of made a joke out of it. That's just kind of what I wished. At the end, it's also worth noting that part of the gender swap was the Lupinrangers got the battle because he used the gender swap thing on the sword. I think it was the sword from the Scissors mech, and it turned it into a hammer lock vehicle. Not lock vehicle, that's Gaim again. I keep wanting to call them lock vehicles. Dial fighter. And that's like a special campaign item. So that was kind of cool, just because I feel like there's a whole can of worms you could up, like with male, female, scissors, hammer, you could do a whole, I don't know. Or, you know, that'd be a weird thing. But it was a cool way of actually giving a real reason for a campaign item. It's probably the only time it'll appear, unless they bring it back for some weird reason later. But it was pretty much a one-off. But it was still kind of a neat thing to see. But yeah, overall, last thing, I just want to know, I thought it was funny, there was a music that kind of reminded me of the Gangler chick's music when she grows things that played when they were cross-dressed, or cross-gendered, I don't know, like they're swapped, whatever. It was really kind of funny, that added to the tone. I just wanted to call that out because I didn't want to forget it. But anyway, this was overall a very strange episode. I'd probably overall give it a 6.7. I didn't really hate it, but it wasn't my favorite thing, like I said. It was kind of mainly a humor episode, so the humor was kind of hit or miss. Some bits I thought were funny, some didn't really land. But I'm at least happy that they made it count and actually did some sort of purpose with like a character backstory, and not maybe a little bit arc, but backstory. Anyway, that's it. Until next time, if you like, comment, subscribe. Dawson Ryder, signing out.